Well, okay then. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the very first, well, this year at least, edition of a weekly preview show. Holy crap. We got a week to preview. That's cause for celebration. What are we going to do on today's show? Well, we are going to, as I make sure I've got all my stuff lined out, we're going to be looking at a schedule chart to see what teams have good and bad schedules. We're going to be looking at a streaming chart to see if we might want to maximize games if you're playing it that way. We're going to look at players basically through the top 150 or so on the draft board to see if any of them should be perhaps left on your bench. And then we are going to wish you good luck as we make our plan for the week ahead. And then play some fantasy damn basketball. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Dan Bespers. This is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. At Dan Bespers is where you can find me on social media. Old Man Squad is where you can find the network on social. Hit that like button on the video. Subscribe however you're taking in the content. That goes a long way. Drop that 5-star review if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or something of that sort. And yeah, you guys have been incredible. You've done it. Everything I've asked, you've done. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting. They've got every stat, matchup breakdown, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games with the largest catalog, mind you, of odds on everything from football to baseball playoffs. World Series starts in a couple of days. Hockey, hoops, baby. They've even got political props. When the games are over, including the game of politics, head on over to our online casino. Get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet online. The game starts here. So everything I do these days, folks, is a bit of a work in progress. And this is no different because I have what are known as time constraints. What you see before you, and this is one of those shows I think I would actually recommend taking in the video feed. What you see before you is a sort of a clipping. Let's make this bigger, actually, of the free Google Sheet, link in description. It's in the show description, I think, no matter how you're taking it in the pod. One of the tabs that I'm working on now is the streaming grid, which is also going to double as the schedule analysis tool. It's totally free. Again, I'm just doing all this stuff out of the goodness of my heart because I like engagement. I like growth. I like the show growth. I like the Twitter growth, all that good stuff. So, yes, there is something in it for me. What I'm going to do, and I'm only 11 days into the season, 10, 11 days into the season so far, because this stuff takes time, and I have been going so hard on draft stuff that I just wanted to get enough done to do this first show. And that's basically getting us through the middle of next week. So take a look at it. I can't zoom in much farther because it'll start to block things out. I wonder if is there like a presentation way? How do we do that? I bet we can. No, that's not going to do it, is it? What if I get rid of the formula bar? What was the formula bar? Oh, I don't need that. Yeah, I'm trying to figure this out on the fly, and it's not going all that great. Oh, there we go. Full screen mode. Ta-da! That'll add a little bit to the screen. So, again, this is now the schedule and streaming chart that we're going to be working off of throughout the year. This is an excellent tool. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. And it's going to give you a really nice example of how to build in your week-to-week strategy if you're in an unlimited games format. What we're also going to be looking at today, and we're going to switch over to that right now, is basically the top 150 on the Yahoo board, pre-ranks, and whether or not there's anything notable going on with those players. So let's start with the players first, and then we'll get to the schedule analysis because I want to talk about the players, and then we can see where they slide into the whole thing. Starting at the top, you see a lot of game time decision tags, but basically everybody on the screen right now is good to go until you get to Joel Embiid. That's the first legitimate question mark at pre-rank 12. Earlier today, Kyle Neubeck put out a tweet. He covers the 76ers for PHLY Sports. And the tweet was basically, I can read it for you. A few of us who hung out on the court just got to watch basically an entire post-practice workout from Embiid with staffers, roughly 30 to 40 minutes or so. Again, this is a quoted tweet from Kyle Neubeck at Kyle, Neubeck. Insofar, nice word there, Kyle, as you can tell from that, he looks good, and I would expect him to go Wednesday. Okay, then. Now, that's not the be-all, end-all of what's going to go on with Joel Embiid, but a pretty good vote of confidence from Neubeck that Embiid will likely play on their opener. Their home opener is against Milwaukee on Wednesday. It's part of a pretty busy day. Philly has a 3-game week. To that end, if you're in a weekly league, I think you get him in there. The 3-game week, if he's that close, you figure 2 kind of at the absolute worst. They don't have a back-to-back coming up, at least not as far as I've filled in the calendar so far. So you're going to get 2, maybe 3, it sounds like, games out of Joel Embiid. So that's a good one. We'll keep scrolling. Nobody else on that first page is worth talking about. Let's go to page number 2. Scroll up to the top. I realize, by the way, people, that this is a little bit of a low-tech way to go through the list of players. But at least for right now, going through the pre-rank is probably the best way to do it. Paul George is the next name on the list. And let's see if there's a way I can pull his face up on the screen so you guys know who I'm talking about. There we go. So we're talking about Paul George next. He's someone I would sit. Latest on Paul George is that he is, they don't think he's going to go on opening night. I guess they don't know yet. They're going to check him out tomorrow. They'll check him out again on Wednesday. I'd be pretty damn surprised if he was going for the opener. Paul George is not the world's fastest healer on top of everything else. So I would expect him to miss at least a couple of ball games here. I am sitting Paul George in the first week of the season. Continue scrolling. Kawhi Leonard, obviously out. He's one that you fully sit. There's no real question on that one. And we keep on rolling. Getting into the 60s now. It's weird that it got to 59. 25 on each page. Are there players missing on this? Oh, you know what? This one I think has... We got to go to all players. Let's do that. That'll fix it. Anybody that I missed in there? I don't think so. Sorry, guys. That was goofy. Jaren Jackson Jr. is one that got whiffed on because he was one of the keepers in here. And Jalen Williams, also a keeper in this league that you guys are looking at the board from. Jalen Williams, they thought the ankle sprain was pretty light. I'd be inclined to play him in this opening week. OKC's got 3 games. They go Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. I think you'll get him in there. It sounds like the Grizzlies are expecting to have JJJ this week. Their opener's on the road in Utah on Wednesday. They have a Friday, Saturday back-to-back. That's actually part of a 5-7. We'll get to that in just a little bit here. So I would play both of those guys since they each have 3-game weeks, and it sounds like they're both pretty damn close to getting cooking. Moving along to the next page, making sure we got everybody. Nick Claxton sounds like he's probably going to be a go, so I don't think we have to worry about that. Isaiah Hardenstein is obviously someone you throw on your bench. Same with Devin Vassell. These guys have not been cleared to play yet. Unless we get an abrupt about face on Vassell. Still kind of waiting on news on him, but they've only got a 2-game week. The Spurs, that is. They play Thursday, Saturday. So, unfortunately, you have a lot of time, and you're not going to get an update, I would think, until at least Tuesday, probably Wednesday on that one. But my lean right now is the expectation, at least for me, is that Devin Vassell belongs on your bench. We'll keep going, although pretty soon here, you get into an area of the board where you shouldn't be taking chances on guys who, especially in a low games week where a bunch of teams have 2 and a few have 3, you really can't afford to take a 0 there because you're talking about, most weeks, most teams are probably only going to have 30 games this week. Every game you lose is 3+%. Trey Murphy, who got himself a nice contract extension, we haven't had an update on him yet. I'm still waiting on one. I'd love to get one here soon. But as of the moment, he would be someone to keep on your bench. Pelicans, by the way, are a 3-game week. Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. 2 of those are sort of busy days, so probably leave him on the bench. Mark Williams, we haven't gotten an update on either. I doubt he's ready for the opener. Charlotte's a 3-game week with a Saturday or Friday, Saturday back-to-back after a Wednesday game, so they're on all 3 of the busy days. I would lean away from Mark Williams here to start the season as well. Let's go a little bit past top 100, see if we can get a little more. Chris Middleton sounds like he's not going to be ready by opening day, so don't do it. Was Milwaukee. They've got 3 games, but I don't care. I mean, 2 max for a guy they're going to bring along slowly. Hell no. Obviously not Porzingis, not for a couple of months yet. And now you're getting into the area like RJ Barrett, unless we get a positive update on him. Don't do it. I didn't even realize Asar Thompson was currently injured. That's on me. And now you're getting into guys where if there's any question at all, you definitely bench them. So that's the sit-start on the injured players. Let's go back and talk a bit about the schedule again, since I think this is going to be the biggest part of our shows, at least when we do these weekly previews, is to kind of go through almost on a day-by-day and think through how we actually want to navigate the week. First things first, let's talk about the teams that have worse schedules this week, because most of the NBA has a 3-game week, but Dallas, and you can see I've color-coded their team names in red, so you can see which ones have a 2-game week. I'll update that at the beginning of every week. So next Monday, I'll switch to whichever teams have the crappy week there as well. So Dallas, Denver, Miami, New York, Sacramento, San Antonio, Utah, and Washington. That's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of the 30 teams have a 2-game week. It's a big deal because if you have a couple of guys on those teams and your opponents don't, you're going to be set behind the 8 ball. And on top of everything else, Dallas and Denver go Thursday, Saturday. Miami goes Wednesday, Saturday. New York goes at least, they get started tomorrow, Tuesday. They go Tuesday, Friday. Sacramento, San Antonio, Washington are all also Thursday, Saturday, and then Utah is Wednesday, Friday. It's going to be hard to use many players from those teams that are fringy, at least in terms of your streaming board, other than New York, because New York is playing tomorrow, Tuesday, when there are only 4 teams in action. So what I did, and today's Monday now, so it's too late for you to do it because your weekly moves have kicked in, is in head-to-head leagues where we drafted more than 13, so not the Yahoo Public one because there sort of isn't enough space on your bench. But I have a personal league where we draft 16 rounds and 13 players start. I took a couple of nicks right at the very end of the draft, just assuming that whatever these other teams are doing in the 16th round, that guy's not going to stay on their team. The odds of those 15th and 16th rounders remaining on one of those teams for the entire season is extraordinarily, almost infinitesimally small. So instead, I took a New York Knick and I took a Minnesota Timberwolf. Not that it matters there because the Wolves have 3 ball games, but I just wanted to use my last 2 picks to basically stream without having to use weekly moves for it. This would have been something that I potentially could have put in a show yesterday if I had even more than 8 spare minutes on Sunday. For those of you that did not have the foresight to spend your last couple of draft picks on streaming calendar options, this is the way you can kind of navigate the week. So the first 3 days of the week are without any back-to-backs. Doesn't matter what team you're looking at. No one has back-to-backs in there. However, the Boston Celtics go Tuesday, Thursday. They have a particularly good schedule in there among these teams that play tomorrow. The Lakers go Tuesday, Friday, Saturdays. Those are the very busy days. Minnesota goes Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So they have a pretty good schedule to start the week. And then New York, we mentioned, is Tuesday, Friday. So good schedule tomorrow. And then just 1 game over the other 5 days of the week. If you have players on any of those 4 teams, we just talked about 4 tomorrow, and double checking any of them are fringy New York players, you should be getting off of those New York players starting immediately after tomorrow. Because again, their only other game is on a busy day where it might be an overload day for you anyway. It might not, because Wednesday, Friday, Saturday are 10 games apiece, which is right on the cutoff. If you assume, that's 20 out of the 30 teams playing, so exactly 2/3 of your roster of 13 players is going. That's like around 9, meaning you shouldn't quite be at overload, but if you're tipped slightly into the busier teams on those days, then anyway, that's how you end up in an overload, even on not an overload day. 11 is typically where you get to like pure overload. But again, it's purely anecdotal in terms of what your team actually is. We can talk about math all we want, but for you, for me, whoever, the only thing that matters is the one team you're looking at in that one moment. I would not recommend using a roster move this week the first 2 to 3 days of the week, which I realize sounds nuts because there are no games on Monday. You've got all 4 of your roster moves just kicking around in the tank. You're itching to use one of them, but you gain almost nothing other than perhaps New York on Wednesday. If you have a Nick, like I drafted Miles McBride with my last round pick in that league we were talking about, I'm not going to hold Miles McBride to start him on Friday, even if I think he has an okay game on Friday. There are teams that have 3 games the rest of the week where New York has 1. Anytime, let's set this out right at the beginning. This is my tenets of streaming, especially if you're going to do it at the beginning of the year, which I don't always recommend because, like, if you drafted a particular player hoping that they were going to do some stuff, I mean, I hope you guys, like most of the guys you draft, you're expecting to do some stuff other than like the guys that I just talked about at the very, very end of a deeper draft. You probably don't want to punt on them this quickly anyway. But let's say you specifically drafted someone as a streaming slot. Streaming tenet number 1 is any move you make should net you a positive of 2 games played over whatever stretch of time you're planning on letting that move sit. That has a lot of wiggle room, I realize, but like for New York, for instance, they have a game tomorrow, Tuesday, and then they have 1 game between that and the following Monday. So over the 5 days in between there, they play one game. They host Indiana on Friday. There are a number of teams where if you rolled them Wednesday through Sunday, you get 3 games instead of 1. That's a net increase of 2 games that you got using 1 roster move. That's a big time thing to do. But it doesn't have to necessarily be over a 5-day span. There are no teams, as I mentioned, that go back-to-back on Wednesday, Thursday. But if there was, that would be the same thing. New York doesn't play Wednesday, Thursday. If someone did, you'd get a net 2-game positive over that span. You just have to build in the moves you're using into your weekly moves limit. The beauty of the first thing I talked about, which for those that are new, we call that long streaming. You're not streaming for 2 or 3 or 4 days at a time. You're streaming for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days at a time. And then you use your next roster move. The beauty of what we just talked about is you end up using 1 roster move, gaining 2 games played, and you're not using another roster moves for that particular slot on your team for 5 days. 6, really. On that day after, then you have to use your next roster move because at that point, New York would play again and you'd no longer have a +2, basically. So the reason I don't like using moves early this week, other than to abandon ship on the New York Knicks, is that after tomorrow, every single team in the NBA plays either 2 or 3 games, except the Knicks, who have only 1, after tomorrow. Meaning, whatever you do in that window, the best you can gain is 1 game played for the rest of the week if you were long streaming. Okay, now that we know long streaming isn't going to net us a +2 over the rest of this individual week, Yes, you could potentially look at a longer span if you wanted a long stream into the following week. Like, Atlanta's an interesting example of this. You could switch from a Nick to a Hawk and hold them all the way through the middle of the following week. That's sort of a different beast. But if we're just attacking this first week right now, and we're kind of going day by day, you're not using moves tomorrow because, again, like, what are you going to get into? What are you gaining? Are you switching from a 2-gamer to a 3-gamer? Probably should have thought about that before tomorrow. Other than the Knicks, you're not using a move on Wednesday because the other teams we talked about that play tomorrow, the Lakers, the Timberwolves, and the Celtics, they all still have 2 games the rest of this week. Celtics have them on, well, one of them on a good day. What I would, however, recommend is looking Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Condense this week. Again, I'll repeat for like the 9th time, other than the Knicks, because they're the only team who goes into a schedule anomaly that early, that clunky, meaning 1 game in 5 days. Nobody else has anything like that, at least not through the 10, 11 days of schedule that I've filled in so far. Other than the Knicks, there is no obvious like up-down on the board. So if you get to Thursday, which again, by the way, it's worth noting, no one in the NBA goes Thursday, Friday back-to-back either. So after Wednesday, there still isn't that big of a reason to make a move the following day. Because after Wednesday, and I'll highlight it just so people watching can see, after Wednesday, I believe every single team in the NBA, other than Miami now and New York, and Utah, sorry, three teams left, still has 2 games. So after Wednesday, that's why I said I want you to condense this week to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You start to very slowly add teams to the schedule sucks bucket. Think of the week that way. Whose schedule sucks for the whole week? Nobody right now. Whose schedule sucks for the whole week after Tuesday? The Knicks. Whose schedule for the rest of the week sucks after Wednesday? You add Utah and you add Miami. So on Thursday, you should probably be moving off of Utah and Miami. And I don't know how, and again, like this comes down to whether you're playing streamer type stuff with these guys. But which direction do you go? Well, I would suggest going with someone who plays Thursday. I mean, is there anyone that goes Thursday, Sunday? I probably should have looked this up before I started the show. Oklahoma City has 3 games the rest of the week, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. So you could start with that. See if anybody has 3 games Thursday through Sunday. OKC does. And that's it. Oklahoma City is the only team that has 3 games there. So OKC is certainly the target team if you're dropping a Heat or a Jazz on Thursday. They're not the only team you could target, but they'd certainly be the best, especially if your Saturday wasn't overloaded already. Because again, what you've done now is over a 4-day span, you've turned a team, the Heat or the Jazz, that has 1 game into a team that has 3. You've gone +2 in your games played over the length of time that you're using these moves. So if you have any guys that you were planning on streaming the roster spot for the Knicks, the Jazz, or the Heat, they should not be on your team. Well, the Knicks after Tuesday, the other 2 after Wednesday. Friday, Saturday, Sunday is a total crapshoot because you got tons of teams that play a couple of times, some of them on busier days than others. At that point, you're really just looking to see on your team, okay, what moves do I have left? If I have moves left, I should make sure that I'm both maxing out games and setting myself up for the following week. So teams that have a good schedule starting on Friday, the Hawks go 3 times in 4 days starting on Friday. The Bulls, the Cavaliers, the Pistons, the Pacers, I mean, the list goes on and on like this. The Lakers, The Grizzlies have the best schedule on earth at that point because they actually start a 5 games and 7-day stretch starting on Friday the 25th. The Milwaukee Bucks and the Orlando Magic and the Phoenix Suns and the Portland Trailblazers and the Toronto Raptors and blah, 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 blah. You got a million teams to pick from starting on Friday if you still have any moves left. I don't think you need to save moves for Sunday necessarily, but you could because there are a couple of teams that go Sunday, Monday, which is Atlanta, the Indiana Pacers, the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Portland Trailblazers. So there's 4 teams that you would target if you held on to your last 1 or 2 moves until Sunday. So again, just to reiterate, after Tuesday, drop your Knicks streamers. After Wednesday, drop your Heat or Jazz streamers. Don't drop anybody of relevance this early in the season. I don't know. How many guys is that on your teams? 1? Maybe 2 at the absolute most. So you still should have plenty of moves left for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And again, at that point, I think I'd probably look to see what your overload situation is. If you have room, you could move on from somebody who has 1 game Friday through Sunday for someone that has 2, or move on to someone that potentially has 3 games in 4 days because, as I mentioned, there are so many teams that fall into that mix. Just make sure that you're getting 2 of those 3 games. Well, it would have to be. Yeah, you're okay there. So just make sure that the 2 games you get at the end of this week don't push you, like one of them isn't on an overload day, so you're not actually able to use it anyway. Grizzlies. Let's talk about the Grizzlies briefly because they have the season's first 5-7 run from Friday the 25th to Thursday the 31st. They're at Houston. They host Orlando. They host Chicago on Monday of next week. They host the Brooklyn Nets on Wednesday, and then the Bucks on Thursday of next week as well. So the Grizzlies have the best schedule on earth that you could have. Although, again, 2 of those are on overload days. So, make sure that if you are going that path, that you have room for whatever Grizz you pick up on Friday, Saturday of this week. And because if you're overloaded, then it doesn't do you a whole lot of good. It's effectively then a 4 games in 7 days for Memphis, and you'd have been better off taking somebody that plays Sunday on a 5-game day. But if you have room, the Grizzlies should have some streamables this year. Who's getting drafted on that team? Typically, pretty much the entire starting 5. Edey, JJJ, Smart, Ja, Bane. Starting 5 is all drafted, and I don't know that anybody off the bench is getting drafted for the Grizzlies. So maybe you look at, oh, hell. I don't even know. Grizzlies bench is weird. Maybe like a Santi Aldama as someone that you could play 5 games in 7 days that would have value because of the volume of games. And this, of course, is not for Roto players. You Roto folks, my week 1 strategy we'll get to in a minute. That'll be sort of like the parting thoughts on this show. So that's your schedule analysis for week 1.5, basically. And again, this chart, use this chart liberally. Keep logging into my free Google Sheet anytime you want. I'm going to be color coding more stuff. Right now, the only things I've color coded are the bad team weeks on the left column, which I'm going to shift over, by the way, as we go. I'll keep moving that column across. I've also color-coded the back-to-backs. I've listed how many games there are on any given day of the week up near the top. And we're going to color-code 3 games in 4 nights or 4 and 6 also. We'll have some sort of way of cataloging where those come and thinking last year to the end of the regular season, I used like a very light purple to just sort of, or maybe it was like a light yellow, just to shade outside the back-to-backs. Like, oh, you could have these players on this side of the back-to-back, and 4 and 6 is still pretty good. That's 2/3 of the days. 3 games in 4 nights is 75%. These are the things you're looking for. 5 and 7 though allows you to not use moves while getting over 71% of game days. So the best obviously is back-to-back because that's 100% of the 2 days, but you have to use a lot of roster moves to keep up with that. 3 games in 4 nights is pretty good because you get 75%, and you can use a couple of roster moves, maybe 2 moves every 4 days, and that works in the 7-day rotation. But if you can find a 5 and 7, that allows you to get a really great percentage and save your other 3 moves for whatever you might need. If you have any questions, this is the perfect show to use the comments section. I considered, and I don't think I'm going to be able to do it, but I might try to do it going forward. I considered trying to get a few mailbag questions in there because I know people are going to have weird thoughts about players that I forgot to mention. But I think the comments on the YouTube page is probably the best way to deal with this. So if you have any follow-ups, throw them in there. I'll do my very best to get to as many or all of them if I can. We'll try to keep these shows in around this half an hour range. And quickly here, at the end of the program, and before I jump into one of my last three cash drafts, because I'm a lunatic, Roto strategy for week 1. Do not play your entire roster. Don't do it. What you want to do in Roto is only play the guys that you feel very confident are going to be rolling top 100 or better the first week of the season. That's it. Only top 100 or better to start the season, unless there's like a true specialist type that's like 115 range, but you really need the stats that they give you. If you have guys on your club where you're like, I don't really know what this dude's going to be this year, but I drafted him because I'm excited about it, you can leave that dude on your bench, because the key to Roto is using your games played limit, your games played max, the games cap, as we call it. Use your individual game. Each game is such an important piece of currency in the Roto world. Spend your coins properly. Don't go throwing them around everywhere. As an example, let me see if I can find a Roto league of mine where I can use it as a good example. Which one is drafted already? Here's one that's drafted. So this one goes 15 deep. One of my very late draft picks was Cam Johnson, who I think is going to have a pretty good start to the year. I might not start him for the Nets' first game because I just don't know how aggressive he's going to be. He's a coin flip guy for me. Gary Trent Jr., almost no chance I start him on the very first day, even though it might be his best chance with Middleton likely still out. I just don't know what he's going to do. Like, yeah, I mean, odds are he's going to play 27, 28 minutes and chuck up a few threes. But what if the Bucks decide they want to run big in that ball game? What if Gary Trent only plays 22 minutes on opening night? You just can't afford, in head-to-head, getting anything out of anyone is a positive. In Roto, that's not the case. You want prime cut basketball games. You want the good, juicy stuff every time you roll a games played number out there. You want whoever you start to give big numbers. The absolute worst thing that can happen in a Roto league is you have a guy that starts a game and gets hurt 4 minutes in because they use up a games cap and don't give you any stats. Head-to-head, it sucks. It sucks to have a guy go down, but, I mean, maybe they got you like 4 points, a couple rebounds, and a block before they got hurt. That's horrible. You'd sooner take a 0 and no game played on the Roto side. So don't start your entire roster. Start your 9, maybe 10 favorite guys. If you want to go really crazy, you can get up to 11. Definitely don't start all 13. Unless you snag the greatest Roto lineup in the history of mankind. But that's your week 1 Roto strategy, and that's your week 1 preview. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Again, comments appreciated on this one because we're going to try to address any questions you guys might have. I'm sure there's some like head-to-head, start-sit, weekly type of things. And let me know if there's little stuff that I could have done differently with this show, because I'm very open to suggestions on how we fix stuff around the edges. This is a first pass at it. It's similar to the preview shows we did last year, but again, just trying to tweak it, trying to make it better every time along the way. I'm Dan Bespris. Follow on Twitter at Dan Bespris. I got so many things. We're going to put all this stuff on Twitter. We're going to do everything all the time. Hit me over there. Like, rate, subscribe, and we'll see you guys tomorrow when the season frickin' starts. How about that?